candidates meeting for the Wellington Federation of Agriculture. Thank you to the four main candidates in the area for attending, taking time out of your day. We had initially spoken about having an in-person meeting, and just the scale of size of Wellington County, and this time of year, it's difficult to get members to be able to attend a meeting. Many, myself and others, have come off a tractor to be able to be here. And so I think we do have the great thing about this is Lisa is recording the event. So if that's okay with everybody here. Yeah, okay. And we can post it on our webpage, as well as she's going to post it on YouTube. So we've done this in the past, and it is great because members who are either still in the fields or maybe a bit of a competition of a hockey game tonight, yeah, they can watch it at another time, because the issues are important and it gives them that flexibility. So we will just start the Wellington Federation. We're a little over 1,500 members within the County of Wellington. So and we work with the OFA to kind of lobby for policies to create a sustainable and profitable environment for farming in Ontario. So we work and bring member concerns forward to the OFA, and they work really closely with the provincial government to be able to provide that voice for local producers at the provincial and then on to the federal level as well. So we have a hub of agricultural innovation with over 200 different commodities and grown in the County of Wellington. So a very diverse area within the province. So we will start with opening statements. And as I said, Laura, you will be first up. And I don't see Gord Grant, Lisa, on the screen in terms of he was going to provide some timing. Have you seen him log in yet?
No, I didn't. And I've texted him, so I don't know what's happening. So
okay, well, I have a stopwatch here. I can keep track.
Alrighty.
What I'll probably do is if you go up to the 3 minutes, when there's about 15 seconds left, I'll just put my hand up, and that'll give you time to know that your time's almost up. So, all right, if you want to start us off, Laura.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Laura Bisutti from the Green Party. I've been living in Stratford for the last, what is it now, 12, many years, 1988. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you to the farmers, because I am fond of food and eating. So the statistics, between 1996 and 2016, we lost 1.5 billion acres of farmland, which turns out to be 175 acres per day, which is not sustainable. It's not sustainable to grow a population at the expense of land that will feed the population. So we must preserve good land for farming, maintain soil health, and support climate-smart agriculture to protect local and sustainable food. Because we want everyone to have access to humane, healthy, and low-impact food. We want local farmers to earn a good income growing food sustainably. The Greens want to reward farmers who rebuild soil health with cover crops, rotational grazing of livestock, etc., through a crop and livestock insurance discount and other incentives. So we want to shift support from the corporate industrial agriculture to supporting soil health agriculture. We want to shift support from intensive confined animal agriculture to regenerative animal agriculture. We also want to protect farmers against losses for up to 10 years as they transition from chemical agriculture to soil health agriculture. And pay farmers, landholders, for verified ecosystem services. We need to keep farmland as food land that farmers can afford to buy. So we must permanently protect prime agriculture land from non-agricultural uses And we do this by freezing urban boundaries to stop sprawl, and we end exclusionary zoning to permit more housing options within built-up spaces. We need better transit. We need inter-regional transit to connect rural communities. And finally, we need to implement a grocery code of conduct to protect farmers, local food producers, and consumers. Thank you.
That's great, Laura. Thank you very much. I see Gord, our timekeeper is logged in now. Look, Gord, if you want to turn on your camera. And hello. So do you have you were making a very creative sign, you said, to let people know when their time was up. Did you do that? No?
What I didn't do was use the time bomb that I've used in previous provincial elections, but I do have a 15-second warning. And then
a stop. Okay.
Is that all good?
That is perfect.
So I'll probably only have to use this, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
So Laura has done her opening statement, and we will move on to Jody. Welcome.
Thank you, and thanks very much to the Wellington Federation of Agriculture for the invitation to attend this all candidates meeting, and thanks to everyone who's joining us online. My name is Jody Burback, and I'm your NDP Ontario candidate for Perth Wellington. I've lived in Stratford since 1999, and I moved to this area because I thought it was a great place to raise children, and I wasn't wrong. I have 3 great kids, and they are 20, 18, and 16. My 20-year-old is currently studying at the University of Guelph. My 18-year-old is at the University of Waterloo, and my youngest is still in high school here in Stratford. I've been a small business owner for the past 28 years, primarily in the graphic design and communications field. And since 2018, I've been a city councillor in Stratford. I've been asked many times why I'm running to be your provincial representative, and the answer is pretty simple. I love living in this region and in this province, and I'm ready to work hard to make it a better place for all of us to live. We're facing a lot of challenges right now in Ontario, and specifically here in Perth Wellington. As a city councillor, I've seen firsthand the challenges that local families are facing, especially when it comes to finding a home they can afford. Home prices and rents are the highest they've ever been. And young adults really deserve to be able to find homes they can afford in the communities where they grew up. As a parent with kids who've come through the public school system, I've certainly felt frustrated in recent years with large class sizes, poorly ventilated classrooms, schools falling into disrepair, and seeing small local schools being closed. These problems are not new. The Conservatives and the Liberals before them have closed many rural schools and hospitals. We do deserve so much better. As a small business owner, I can relate to the struggles that my fellow businesses have faced over the past few years. Many of the businesses in Perth Wellington, of course, are in the agricultural sector, which is a very important industry for us. To the tune of $100 billion, or sorry, $1 billion annually, not 100 billion. Unfortunately, the importance of the agricultural industry in Ontario seems to be lost on Doug Ford. Instead of protecting farmland and investing in the next generation of family farmers, he's helping his buddies gobble up farmland. I believe that the NDP is exactly what we need right now in Ontario. Our priorities are to invest in healthcare, schools, and infrastructure, and to protect our precious farmland and water.
Thank you very much, Jody. Gord didn't even have to put the big stop sign up. Thank you for that. We'll next move to Ashley.
Thank you very much. My name is Ashley Fox, and I am a registered practical nurse. I am your Ontario Liberal candidate for Perth Wellington. What made me want to run in general as an MPP is that I already make a difference for my patients, and I thought, why can't I make a difference for my community as a whole? There's concerns of communication in our representation, and I want so much more from government, and I hope you do too. This desire has fueled my decision to run and make things better, especially for everyone in Perth Wellington, to feel like they're respected and to feel like an MPP will listen to you and respond to the people that she represents. We need representation in government that is going to acknowledge our rural riding is unique. We face a lot of different challenges, but we have a lot of strengths as a result of our diverse economy. With the Ontario Liberal Party, our focus on rural and agriculture will be to give back to the farmers their power of negotiations. Mega companies have used their power to drive unfair negotiations, and the Ontario Liberal Party would like to focus on bringing that back to negotiations. We would focus on communities, infrastructure, schools, and education, as well as healthcare in the rural areas to be able to ensure that our communities will be able to justify employment that will support our agricultural and rural areas. We're united in the province to ensure that rural Ontarians have access to the same quality of care, education, that the rest of the opportunities that we have for entrepreneurship in Ontario is the rest of the province, sorry. Thank you again for inviting me, and I look forward to continuing.
Thank you very much, Ashley. And our final statements will be from Matt.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Ray. I'm the Progressive Conservative candidate, and it's great to join you this evening. And I just want to thank the Wellington County Federation of Agriculture and Gord and Lisa and Janet, of course, for organizing this event. I know it's a busy time of year for all our farmers across the riding and farm families. I saw many tractors in the fields today when I was driving across the riding. I'm originally actually from Harrison, where I grew up on my parents' dairy farm. So I have a deep understanding of the importance of our agriculture to our riding and to our province. I'm a first-time homeowner in Mitchell and understand the market challenges our young people are facing. In addition to cleaning out pens, milking cows, and feeding calves, I've worked in retail, student services, and in both House Commons and the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. And I currently work for an education company. Perth Wellington deserves an MPP who understands our values and cares about our rural communities. If elected as your next member of provincial parliament, I will advocate for our agriculture and farm families at Queen's Park. Just as I'm sure many people on the call know, it is a $45 billion industry in GDP for the province, and over 7,000 people work in the agri-food sector. That's stats from 2020, so it's very important, obviously, to our riding, but to the province as well. A re-elected Progressive Conservative government under the leadership of Premier Doug Ford will continue to get things done for farm families and agribusinesses. We kept our promise to increase the business risk management by $50 million. We're investing $4 billion into rural broadband to ensure every community in Ontario has access to high-speed internet by 2025. Our PC government passed the Security from Trespassing and Protecting Food Act for our farm families and to ensure we protect our food security. Our PC government will rebuild Ontario's economy, continue working for workers, continue building highways and key infrastructures, continue keeping costs down, and implement a plan to stay open. I look forward to the questions this evening and the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matt. I think this is the first all candidates meetings that we've had that we didn't have an incumbent in the midst. So it does make the evening quite interesting to get to know each of you. So thank you for your opening statements. So we do have, as I said, some questions, and we will do a rotating basis for answering. So Jody, I'm going to have you answer this question first. So the first question is about infrastructure. So rural infrastructure continues to be a barrier for agri-food business, competitiveness, and sustainability. From maintained roads, bridges, and drainage to widespread broadband access to affordable energy and increased social infrastructure. How will your party address natural gas infrastructure deficits, affordable electricity, fast, reliable internet in the rural areas, rural schools, and access to rural health care? And we have you up to 2 minutes to kind of answer that. I know it's a lot, so yeah. And if anybody needs
a big question,
to repeat part of the question, please feel free to go ahead and do that. So we'll have you start, Jody, I should say.
Okay, thank you for the question, and I think I'm going to start by focusing on rural infrastructure spending. So we know that a lot of infrastructure, or most infrastructure spending actually, is the realm of municipalities, and the province's role is to provide funding for that that infrastructure spending. And there's something called the Municipal Partnership Fund. And over the last several years, the Liberal and the Ford governments have cut that funding. So what happens is municipalities are responsible for roads and bridges, but unfortunately, we are not getting the type of support that we need in order to actually make those investments without really raising people's personal or land taxes or municipal taxes. So what the NDP is thinking is that we need to get back to that municipal partnership fund and start investing again and giving our municipalities the money that they need for roads and bridges. Something that we'd all be familiar with that's happened recently is that the Ford government gave back some money to people who have license plate stickers. And that money actually is $1 billion that's usually invested in municipal or in road infrastructure. And I know that in the city of Stratford, at the municipal level, our infrastructure budget is about $7.5 million. And $3 million of that for next year's budget was going to come from that fund that is funded by that sticker tax. So we are looking at a big deficit. So I'm not sure how we can get our roads and our bridges kept in good repair when we don't have that funding and we're not sure where that money is going to come from. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jody. Next up will be Ashley.
And I apologize. Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So it's about infrastructure. So the question is, how will your party address natural gas infrastructure deficits, affordable electricity, fast, reliable internet, rural schools, and access to rural healthcare?
Perfect. Thank you so much. So as mentioned in my opening statement, we support a united province. So rural Ontarians need to have access to healthcare, education, and opportunities that the rest of the province has. When we look at education, we're going to be reviewing how schools are funded. It's based on decade-old evidence and a one-size formula. So we're going to be looking at rural schools and how to address repairs as well as education in the community for them. When we look at making it easier for rural Ontarians, we're going to connect them with the community transportation grants by making them permanent. And very similar to other candidates, we will be expanding internet access with the goal of bringing high-speed broadband internet to every household by 2025. In regards to healthcare, we will make sure that additional healthcare services, including mental health services, are available in the rural communities, as well as ensuring that everyone has access to a family doctor or a nurse practitioner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Next up is Matt.
Thank you. Just for some context, the Ford government and the PC government has invested $20 million in rural broadband since 2018 in the riding, roughly representing 3,100 households or businesses. And many of those projects are being completed this summer or by the end of the year. So it's great to see some of that funding coming locally to our riding. Great question about infrastructure. We need to get our, obviously, agriculture goods to market. Since 2018, there's been over $28 million invested in infrastructure funding. So I apologize to the people who live in Mount Forest on the call. You'll see Queen Street ripped up. That's through provincial infrastructure funding currently. And an example from a couple of years ago was the Conestoga River Bridge just near Arthur, near the Mortons there, which was repaired through provincial funding. And for municipal funding in particular, there's been 20 million given in the last 2 years to our municipal partners and 10 million given just to the 3 municipalities in Wellington County. And then obviously healthcare is very important to our rural communities and our rural hospitals. And it was great to see a couple of years ago that the Ford government gave 18.5 million in an investment to Louise Marshall Hospital for their emergency room upgrades and ambulatory care project and getting those things done. I do know many farmers in Perth and Wellington County would love natural gas to dry their crops. and other needs. Many are on propane now, which is very costly. I do know, I believe phase 3 is starting for the applications with Enbridge. And so our government is very much in favor of moving forward with that. There is one project in Perth County moving forward currently, which will help alleviate some of the costs associated for our agriculture producers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Rounding off this question is Laura.
Yes, the Green Party wants to increase the number of nurse practitioner services in rural areas as well as the North Ontario. Broadband, of course, is a key component in that we want to have all of the North and, of course, rural areas connected. As far as education, want to increase the funding. Our plan is to merge the Catholic and public school boards, which will end duplication, give us savings of between 1.3, 1.6 billion, and of course, ending the discriminatory hiring practice, which bars teachers who are not Catholic from teaching, and then reinvest the money into the classroom. And this will increase equity and, of course, encourage diversity. Oh, and electricity. Yes, our plan is to increase the, I think it's double the amount of electricity produced by hydro and solar and wind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. We'll move on to the second question. First one person to answer this question will be Ashley. So this is around preserving farmland, and many of you have already kind of touched on this point. So we know that arable farmland is one of the most important natural resources in food production. Responsible land use planning is vital to ensuring food security and protecting Ontario's food supply chain. Recently, Bill 109 was introduced and the More Homes for Everyone Act, and we have seen some of our neighboring communities, primarily Halton and KW, that have determined they have fixed urban boundaries. And this act does jeopardize the planning locally. So our question is, will your party implement planning policies and respect local planning priorities that balance urban growth and protect our arable farmland? So we'll start with Ashley.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, we will increase the 10% that is currently in legislation. We will increase it to 30% of the protected land. In addition to that, we will ensure that there is more feedback at the planning level. Consultations will not be ignored, as they have been with MCOs. And we will ensure that there is transparent consultation between municipalities, the federal government, the provincial government, and those farmers and rural communities to have a voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Matt.
Thank you. Yes, a very important question. Coming from a farm background, I understand the importance of our agriculture land and farmland. We have some of the best farmland, I would argue, in the world. In Perth Wellington here, you can grow many different crops. And so I know a re-elected PC government will continue working with our municipal partners, rural and urban. Obviously, the housing crisis, I'm sure we'll talk about later, but also working with them to maintain our farmland and our obviously agribusinesses contribute so much to our local communities, and working with them to maintain our farmland while also building more densely houses in our rural communities, because many people want to come here, which is great. And just working with our municipal partners to deliver a supply action plan, which was great to see in the budget. We're going to do it every year. So obviously that feedback from our elected representatives locally, having that feedback moving forward. So if we are re-elected, we'll continue to consult with our municipal partners as we move forward to address the housing crisis, but also maintain our farmland. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Next is Laura.
Yes, the Greens plan to permanently protect farmland from urban sprawl by freezing the urban boundaries and protecting water and environment by doubling the size of the green belt to create a blue belt to protect waterways, and moratoriums on gravel mining to protect our water. And we work with the municipalities to ensure that the zoning allows the proper infill construction that would be needed. So that would stop the sprawl of cities.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Laura, were you done?
I am done, yeah.
Oh, sorry, you kind of grained out there for a bit. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Finally, Jody.
Thank you. Yes, the NDP has quite a few different approaches to taking care of the urban boundary issue. The first is to concentrate on intensification. So within urban boundaries and even in smaller communities, the goal is to build more housing within those boundaries and not allow sprawl. And the problem with Bill 109, which was recently introduced and was actually not even debated on the floor before it was given royal assent, is that municipalities will not be consulted on local planning decisions if that bill goes through. So Bill 109 will force developers, it will allow developers to have more control and municipal councils to have less control. So I find it's very problematic. And Bill 109 is probably one of the first things that the NDP will get rid of if we form government. MZOs are another tool for government that is really problematic. This allows planning decisions at the provincial level, skipping over municipal consultation altogether. And it's basically an assault on democracy. So the NDP will also not be continuing with the use of MZOs in the future. So intensification and protecting our farmland is really important. And looking at the type of housing, because we obviously need housing. So looking at intensification, including what we call the missing middle. So stacked townhouses, duplexes, triplexes within existing urban boundaries are the way that we can create more affordable housing units. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our family has a dairy farm, and I often will tell people the reason that we live, our farm is located where it is, was we had family that were in Milton, and Milton was growing around them, and they decided they wanted to move, and they took a map of the province of Ontario, a soils map, and looked and said, where do we want to farm? And there was a spot near Woodstock, and there was where we are near Fergus. And I tell that story because, I mean, the community is lovely, but the community wasn't the draw. The people weren't the draw. The schools weren't the draw. The soil was the draw. So I think it's an important story to just really impress upon the importance and the fertility and the ability to run a business on the soil in this riding. So our next question will start with Matt to answer. So we're talking about supply chains. Recent global events have highlighted the importance of a reliable domestic food system. The local agricultural system that supports primary production and processing hinges on reliable, timely supply chains. How will your party support a reliable agriculture system supply chain in Ontario?
Unmute. Yes, thank you, Janet. So over the past 4 years, the provincial PC government has invested in partnership with the federal government, 110 million around processing capacity and improving that, as I'm sure throughout COVID and also now world events, many disruptions to the supply chain. And so we'll continue moving forward with that. So whether it's local abattoirs or working. I was talking to a beef farmer in West Perth, and one of the abattoirs there's a new one in North Bay, which is great for our beef farmers to have that extra capacity, but they get their some of the gas they use from Ukraine. So obviously the conflict there is affecting supply chain. So we'll continue working with our partners to build our agriculture partners to build processing capacity in the budget that was tabled. We're also going to ensure there is $5 million set aside for emergency support initiatives for disruptions. For example, the disruption to the beef industry and the pig industry during COVID and the lack of ability to ship to slaughter facilities. And we're also going to invest $10 million to establish a food security and supply chain fund to strengthen Ontario's food supply, because it really is, obviously we grow great products here, and I think people in Ontario want access to those great products, and even people near us, our neighbors to the south, would love those products as well. So we'll invest $10 million in that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Laura.
Yes, I don't have any comment to make about the supply chain. We haven't discussed that yet. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Jody.
Thank you. Yeah, the pandemic really shed light on the supply chain issues that we face in this province. And the NDP's plan is to create a provincial food strategy. So this would put healthy, locally sourced food onto Ontario tables, support agriculture jobs in food processing, transportation, biofuels, and retail. So it would be an overall strategy to make sure that we are supporting all the different sectors within agriculture within Ontario. Another component of it will be to help young farm families and first-time farmers with mentorship, financial advice, and loan guarantees. So another important piece of it is that we are planning to introduce a regulation of the price of gas. So that will, in effect, lower the price of shipping food, as well as food production. So I think the making sure that the costs and the supply is stable for people so that they can plan. It's an essential part of being in business is to be able to budget and to understand what your costs are going to be versus what you're going to be able to charge for your product. So those supply issues are really important, and it's important to have stability, and that can come from government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ashley?
Thank you. The Ontario Liberal government will be investing additional regional processing capacities. As others have mentioned, the pandemic has really shown us how much we rely on a lot of those local processing, and we just don't have the ability to go outside of our areas often. In addition to that, we would be looking at supporting our local agricultural communities, noting that each division in agriculture will have a different concern with it. So we'd be open to stakeholder feedback and increased consultations of what each division really is looking for. And again, we would be focusing more on the power to drive the unfair negotiations and really give that power back to our agricultural community.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to add a part B to this question and ask it in the same order. I'd like to know what everybody's thoughts around the carbon tax are. Lots of discussion, and I realize that's a federal issue, but I'm curious what your perspective is around the carbon tax, because the largest sector, one of the only sectors that can actually sequester carbon is agriculture. And in the process of sequestering this carbon and growing food, for particularly grain drying and corn drying, and then the fuel for some of our equipment, we're paying a carbon tax. And there's been a lot of lobbying to look at lifting the carbon tax for agriculture because of the process of it's in the process of making food. So I'm curious what each of you feel or think about the carbon tax. I'll start with Matt.
Thanks, Janet. As you alluded to, it is now a federal issue. The Supreme Court decided that. When Premier Ford was elected, he did remove the carbon tax, and then the courts decided that it was a federal jurisdiction. But I agree with you that it doesn't make much sense for agriculture producers who sequester carbon. My parents have, obviously most farmers have a bush property, a portion on their property as well, which they maintain, and it sequester carbon continuously. And so what the provincial government can do in this aspect, since it is mainly a federal area now of jurisdiction, is we are cutting the gas and fuel taxes July 1st. And so we're trying to provide some relief to our producers. I know for our truckers as well who transport the food, that's also a concern they get. And I think it is, I don't believe the Prime Minister's plan to phase out fossil fuel trucks and cars by 2030, I believe, or 2035 is realistic at all. An EV truck cannot pull a cattle trailer. So that's basically sort of my perspective on this issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Laura?
Yes, the Green Party, while we do support the carbon tax, which goes back to the taxpayers, we don't believe that the farmers should be penalized for it. They should be rewarded for the sequestering that they do on their farms. And then I guess the net would be close to zero, the net cost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Jody?
Thank you. Yeah, I believe that regulating gas prices would then take a look at the part that is the carbon tax. Right now, we're paying almost $2 a liter in gas, and about 11 cents of that is carbon tax, is my understanding. So it's significant, but it's not the majority of what we're paying. We know that the oil companies are still making a profit. So that's maybe where we need to look to get some savings. But I do also believe that there should be rewards for sequestration of carbon. So I'm not sure if the federal government would be stepping up to do that, but perhaps the Ontario government could then work with them. I know the NDP is also committed to creating a cap and trade system. And with that cap and trade system, part of it would be that the 25% of the revenue from that system would go back into rural and northern communities. So it specifically targets people that would that are going to be paying more for their energy use, but for a very important industry. So I think there needs to be recognition and reinvestment in our agricultural industries, because we need to be fed. So, and the more locally that we can do that, the better. And we know that farmers are really concerned about the environment as well, and are doing all they can to help preserve our environment and to do the right thing. So we appreciate the sequestration efforts, and would encourage people to do more of that. And if we can do that working together with the federal government, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Ashley?
Thank you. As it was mentioned, it is a federal issue, but happy to provide some insight on this as well. The Ontario Liberal Party is put up into their platform an environmental and climate change plan. In Ontario, we used to be the leadership in terms of our climate action, and unfortunately, the just past or current government has happened, and we've gone backwards. By focusing more on the 30 million failed carbon pricing lawsuit, we've lost funds that could be used for other processes, including stakeholder feedback from our farmers and our consultation process. So as an Ontario Liberal Party, we would be looking at opening up that consultation process with our agricultural communities, rather than focusing on an expensive lawsuit that doesn't go anywhere.
Thank you. Okay, on to the next question. We'll start our rotation again, and Laura will answer this one first. It's on jobs and skill development. It's estimated that annually job vacancies cost Ontario farmers $1.5 billion in lost sales. Promotion of sufficient agricultural skill development has been lacking in Ontario. What policies and strategies will your party implement to address the labor shortages in agriculture prioritize an agricultural education curriculum in secondary and post-secondary program development, and generally promote jobs in the agri-food sector. Laura.
Thank you. Yes, in the secondary system, or I should say the high school system, we do have OYEP and co-op. So we do have, we have started to show, or at least get youngsters interested in different trades, as in agriculture. So we just need to do a better job of advertising, because we want to bring 60,000 young people into the new economy by funding tuition and apprenticeships, and offer a year of free college and a year of guaranteed work after graduating for students in the trades, and that's including farming. Did I answer the question? Sorry. The question is what we would do to support, because you're not, because our farmers do use a lot of migrant workers, so we want to make sure that there's no, delays in getting that done. But we want to especially incentivize young people, Canadians, to look at the agricultural job market and take post-secondary in that field, so that we can replenish our existing farmers who are aging, and continue with our good work that we've done in Ontario for producing food. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Jody?
Thank you. Yep, the NDP we have in our platform that we will be adding agribusiness to the Ontario curriculum. So that's definitely something that we would be developing as soon as we hit the ground. And also investing in trades. Trades are something that's really important to keep Ontario running. And we do have a labor shortage. We have lots of jobs in our riding, and we don't have enough people to fill them. So training is one approach, and that would be the technical college training level. And we're also looking at encouraging people to come to our area from outside. So encouraging support by having newcomer programs, making it easier for workers to transition from being temporary foreign workers to becoming permanent residents. So that's a federal level issue, but we would certainly be advocating for that. We know that a lot of the temporary foreign workers that come and work on farms, and our agriculture workers, are actually highly skilled, and they would be wonderful people to have as permanent residents and newcomers in Ontario. We also would look at affordable housing being a big issue. I know that in the area where I live, there are so many jobs and people can't afford to actually live where they work. So looking at affordable housing is also really important, because people aren't going to take rural jobs if they're going to have to drive an hour or an hour and a half to get here from wherever they can afford to live. So tackling affordable housing is also a really important piece of this puzzle. Thanks.
Thank you, Jody. Ashley?
Thank you. So in terms of our public education system, we would be looking at schools and community hubs and really trying to repurpose our education. As we know, for 1 out of 5 generations before, we're close to a farmer. Now we know it's closer to 4 or 5 generations away. So not many people are really educated in the farming systems. For those that are looking at post-secondary, we would double their OSAP funding and eliminate the interest on student loans, allowing them to really focus on their education at some of our great colleges we have that do focus on farming and agriculture. We would be focusing on our career-focused education programs in school, primarily on small businesses, as we know that often farms can be family-oriented or family-based, as well as looking at entrepreneurship programs as well. And we do know as well that there's financial hardships with farming as well, so we would be looking at mental health supports that would help to acknowledge the financial hardships, but also draw some into the field. Similar to my colleague that just went before me, we would also be looking at affordable housing. When talking to a lot of the agricultural community in our riding, it's very common to hear that housing is unfortunately contributing to the labor shortage, particularly in terms of the cost and the increase for bidding in small communities. So we would be focusing on affordable housing locally as well to be able to strengthen our communities and make them really attractive for addressing the labor shortage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Matt.
Thanks. Yes, so a re-elected PC government would continue working for workers, as I've mentioned in my opening. We would commit $1 billion annually to employment and training programs to help retain people on their jobs or upskill their skills. We're also going to commit $114 million for our skilled trade strategy. And a great example of that locally is the North Perth Skills Hub, which is a $1.8 million investment in the Miss Valley, North Perth, so just next to Wellington County. And a re-elected PC government will invest $15.1 billion in the Ontario Ontario Immigration Nominee Program. And so that will help nominate people and individuals to become permanent residents that match the needs in our community. And obviously, we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country. I believe it's 3.3 currently, the numbers I saw from our Great Fort Market Labor Board, and it's the second lowest in Ontario. So there's definitely a need to provide supports for people to upskill or get into the skilled trades. And then finally, on the education aspect, we did update the science and technology curriculum in the past 4 years, first time since 2007. And a component of that includes food literacy to really encourage students to understand where their food comes from. It just doesn't come from Foodland or No Frills, and understand really how it is grown and what it takes to get that fresh produce to your kitchen table in the morning or evening. Thank you.
That's great. We hosted a 4-H event at our farm last night, and we had 45 kids in a vet club that were between the ages of 10 and 20. So there is a significant interest in agriculture and tons of questions, and a lot of kids at that primary and high school age group that don't always get the curriculum exposure to agriculture. So it's not always in the forefront in their mind in terms of jobs. And we hear the stats that for every agricultural graduate, there's 4 jobs for them. So there's definitely employment in that field, and we need the workers. So it's a very important aspect to agriculture. The next question, well, Jody will be starting us off, and it's about housing. Now, we have touched on housing a few times already, but through deployment of responsible land use practices, preserving farmland can go hand in hand with addressing housing needs. To support agriculture production, intensification of residential development within the existing urban footprint is a responsible solution. What's your party's position on urban expansion and intensification, and how will your party address this issue?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think I might have gone over some of this, but I'm at the risk of repeating myself. We are definitely focused on urban expansion, so intensification, bringing in more housing to urban centers where we'll be able to save the prime farmland for what it really needs to be used for, which is producing food. The problem that I see right now is that we have Bill 109 coming forward, and it's really concerning that developers will be able to sort of get the upper hand on municipal planning, on land use. And it's very concerning that bill was pushed through without any debate. Within municipal government, we have a structure, a democratic structure for zoning. And these zoning decisions and discussions happen at the municipal level. And when they're circumvented by the province, then it's an assault on democracy. So I would say that the NDP would be working strongly with municipalities for inclusionary zoning and making sure that we have zoning rules that allow for the intensification and not restrict it. Because currently some of the zoning structure that we have at the municipal level doesn't allow intensification as easily as it does sprawl. So it's very important that we are focused on working with municipalities and with municipal partners, because that's where zoning issues and decisions take place. And we need to make sure we don't run them over with strong-handed provincial decisions.
Okay, thank you, Jody. Ashley.
Thank you. So we know that local communities know when it's best and where and how to build homes, which includes, again, the rural and agricultural voice and their input and stakeholder and feedback from consultations. Very similar to my colleague, we would be looking at working with municipalities to unlock the land for homes, but we wouldn't be looking at the rural or the agricultural fields in that situation. We'd actually be promoting an incentive program which would utilize commercial space like empty strip malls and empty land use buildings, and looking at them as primary sources rather than looking at using up of our agricultural fields. We would also be building a Home Ontario Building Corp, which would focus on not-for-profit development within the community and not on the outskirts. In addition to that, once again, just to really stress the importance of transparent consultations and feedback. So similar to some of my other colleagues who have mentioned here as well, we wouldn't be forcing the MZOs or overusing them. We'd be looking at a new rules-based measure, which would limit those critical projects to non-for-profit long-term care, affordable housing, and major employment developments as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Matt.
Thanks. Yeah, so everyone, just so everyone's aware, we actually have had record housing starts in the province of Ontario in 2021. 1,000 new homes were started, 13,000 rental units were started. It's the first time in 30 years we've approached that level. So it's important that we acknowledge that we are moving forward on that. As I've alluded to previously, we did table more homes for everyone in March 2022. The goal of that obviously is to reduce red tape, to create more homes, to make it easier to build community housing, which is a need in our communities, and obviously protect home buyers, homeowners, and renters. In the budget, we're committed to 1.2 billion in support provided through the Social Services Relief Fund, and one of Ontario's biggest investments in Ontario history in that. And so, for example, under the past and I believe it was 2019 to 2020, that fiscal year, Wellington County received 6.1 million for community housing projects across the county. And so it's important with that. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll continue to work with our municipal partners, and every year of a 4-year mandate of a re-elected PC government under Premier Ford, we'll work with our municipal partners to deliver a supply action plan with them and working in partnership with them and the concerns they hear from their community. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, I'm just going to ask you one question around what you just said. So the More Homes for Everyone Act, which is the Bill 109, which has come up on a few different discussions tonight. From an agricultural perspective, we understand what the provincial government was trying to do, but we see it as a significant risk for agricultural land when communities have determined very hard urban boundaries, and then developers can come in and potentially risk that urban boundary being expanded. And it was the progressive conservative government that brought that into law with no debate. So the question would be really around the risk to agriculture, what you see as the risk, and where you can't meet the needs of everybody, but this bill really negates the needs of agriculture. So I'd like you to comment on that.
Sure. As everyone knows, I come from a farm background, so obviously I understand the importance to maintain our farmland and protect that. And it's working with our municipal partners locally, whether in raising their perspectives to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, whoever that may be, afterwards, and continuing to advocate for our rural communities and their needs, and whether, for example, a local mayor is like, okay, we want to build this subdivision, but we're going to protect our farmland within the boundaries that they've decided. So working with our municipal partners, as I mentioned, we are going to develop every year of a 4-year mandate, working with our municipal partners in a supply housing action plan.
Okay, thank you. Laura?
Yes, the Green Party wants to freeze urban boundaries and to stop the sprawl and protect the farmland and the natural environment. We want to, well, there are 88,000 acres within the existing urban boundaries in the Golden Horseshoe, that in just that region. So there is area available for development. So if we need to unlock provincially owned land or recondition industrial sites, we need to do that first. We want, and also for infill construction, we need to end exclusionary zoning to give people more housing options within the existing built up spaces. And so that means, if you want to build a fourplex, you would have the right, you wouldn't have to go through zoning processes. And we want to put money towards building 100,000 affordable rental units, and also 60,000 permanent supportive homes with wraparound mental health and addictions services. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, Asha will be answering first. So this is around the Places to Grow Act, which is a provincial act, but we're seeing currently at the municipal level, we're seeing comprehensive reviews of planning policies to address the projected growth that will be happening in Wellington County as outlined in the Places to Grow Act. It's projected that the urban boundaries will need to expand to the tune of 1,200 additional acres, which is all pretty much prime agricultural land. The difficulty when you have provincial policy that impacts, again, local planning, makes it very difficult for agriculture, especially as the more removal from the farm, understanding what agriculture business is, as well as becomes a very political issue, and our voices tend to be smaller because we don't have as many voices on the same footprint. The majority of the land in Wellington County, as we spoke about, is prime agriculture, and virtually all the suggested land that would be, as we mentioned, included would be prime agriculture. So if your party became in power, how would you handle the Places to Grow Act and balance? It's a bit of a duplication of some of the one other question, but the Places to Grow Act itself is very important. So how would your party implement the Places to Grow Act, adopt the Places to Grow Act, cancel the Places to Grow Act? I know everybody needs to have a place to live, but I'm curious with each of you, what your thoughts around the act and the implications on local housing planning is. There's some question whether the projected numbers that the current provincial government are proposing are even accurate. They may be overestimating some of the numbers, which puts a lot of pressure on agricultural land. So we will start with Ashley.
Thank you very much for the question. It would not surprise me any in terms of overestimating, because we know that there's other policies and legislation that have been put in place based on overestimating. So what we would do if elected as government is reopen the consultation process and be able to give agriculture that voice, while also working collaboratively with our municipalities. Obviously, at this time, it needs to be reviewed before it can look forward. And we do recognize that affordable housing is a concern, but there are other methods and suggestions that we can put in place to meet that mandate first before going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Matt?
I know MZOs have been discussed already on our talk tonight. And so no MZO has been issued on non-provincially owned land without the express consent of the municipality involved. And there is obviously an example locally in Stratford, and the municipality requested that that MZO be rescinded related to that development, and it was rescinded by Minister Clark. So we'll continue to work with our municipal partners in that aspect in all development, and whether it's affordable housing, industrial, or agribusinesses. A lot of agribusinesses want to come to the riding. So we'll continue to work with our municipal partners. And I think it's great that a provincial government is working with our municipal partners. And previous governments, they have not been so cooperative, and I think of obviously industrial wind turbines, and under the former Liberal government, they were imposed on some municipalities in Ontario. So we'll continue working with our municipal partners to address all potential growth and growth into the future moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura.
Yes, as I said, the Green Party will freeze urban boundaries, stop sprawl, and we'll concentrate on infill, building low rises, and then for private development, for large housing developments, they would require that 10% of the bills would be for affordable units. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Jody?
Thank you. Yes, the Places to Grow Act, we would be probably scrapping it and starting again, and or reopening consultations on it. It really is important that municipalities are involved, and rural voices, which obviously the population isn't as large in rural areas, but that's where municipalities really come into play in representing those local views. So the other thing that is interesting about the Places to Grow Act is that it's based on numbers that are likely inflated. With our housing market, we also have to deal with speculators. So we do know that there are people that are treating housing as a commodity and that are coming in and buying units up and basically to resell them and to use them on the market. We have an example here in Stratford. There is a condo development, and some friends of mine were downsizing and they wanted to buy a condo, and they went to buy one the day that it opened and they were all sold. And they found out a little bit later that they were able to rent one of the units. So someone said, oh, you can rent it. These people are renting them out. They bought up 8 out of 12 units, one person, and they are using it, and now they're selling them. So the price has gone up, they're reselling them. So a lot of what's going on in our housing market isn't just a lack of supply, it's a total lack of control over what's happening in the market. And the NDP believes that housing is a human right. It's not a commodity to be dealt with on the open market. So we definitely would have a completely different approach to making sure that we have affordable housing for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, and Matt will start answering. It's about risk management programs. So we've talked a lot about the high productive fertile land in Wellington County, and that naturally mitigates greenhouse gas. It naturally filters water and provides many other environmental goods and services. We are under the ruse of Mother Nature constantly, so we often have risks in our business that many other businesses do not see. So what is your party's position around risk management programs and environmental goods and services support for producers? Matt.
Thanks, Janet. Great question. So my uncle is actually a grain and oilseeds farmer, and so he talks to me about this a lot. And so, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, PC government kept their promise and raised the BRM which is business risk management, obviously, to 50 million. to a total of 100 million. And so I know there is an ask to increase it, I believe, by another 150, I may be wrong, million on that aspect from the OFA and our beef farmers and other commodity groups. And so obviously that is for the next government to look at, but we have been there to support our farmers. And also, as I mentioned, the 5 million that we're allocating in the budget for emergency support initiatives, whether that's disruptions in our supply chain related to global events, COVID sort of thing, moving forward. And so it's important that those programs are there for our farmers and the support is there. And then also obviously working with our federal counterparts around AgriVest and AgriStability, making sure they are actually serving the needs of the people and the clients using those programs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Laura.
Yes, the Green Party feels that the farmers should be fairly compensated if the events are out of their control. There is not much of a point of putting a cap on the compensation. So the farmer should not be in a deficit situation. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Jody?
Thank you. Yes. So the risk management program cap, the last election, the PCs promised pre-election that they would increase the cap by 50 million annually starting in year 3 of their government. They did increase it late last year, but or late two years ago, 2021, but it didn't increase it again in this past year, and they don't seem to have increased it in their forthcoming budget for the next year. So the NDP is going to raise the cap on the agricultural risk management program by $100 million. It's a really important program to mitigate risk for farmers and to keep people in business. Again, like I said before, when you run a business, you need to know what your costs are. And of course, you can't always predict what's going to happen with the weather. So we need to have some sort of insurance that we can have our farmers stay in business, keep their family businesses, even when there are downturns in things like the weather or the economy. We need to be able to make sure that they continue to produce food locally. Thanks.
Thank you. Ashley?
Thank you. Very similar to my colleague, we would also be looking at reopening the consultation process and having farmers again have a voice into their into the risk management program. We do recognize that the PC government did increase it. However, my understanding from various associations like the beef farmers and the chicken farmers of Ontario, it did come at a very lengthy process. So we again would be opening up stakeholder and consultation feedback to make sure that we're making the best decision in a timely manner.
Great. Okay, thank you. Next question will Laura start by answering. So a bit of an open-ended question. What do you foresee 2 of the largest changes that will be required in agriculture in the next 4 years if your government, if your party formed government? So we will start with Laura.
Yeah, so it'd be the transformation. Well, I guess it wouldn't be a transformation. There's a lot of regenerative farming already in Perth Wellington, but the transformation of farming as a whole to regenerative farming and a soil health, so that there's less tilling or no tilling, and pest management by using more natural methods rather than chemical, if it's possible, and which is why we're suggesting that the farmers be protected for 10 years as they transform the farming to a more regenerative type farming, which would take in more carbon and provide a better, a less chemical product. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Jody.
I think the biggest changes probably that would happen if we form government is that you'll have a provincial partner in the legislature, people that are ready to work together with the agricultural community and make some investments, because it is a huge business, a huge industry that keeps Ontario running, keeps us fed. So things like creating a provincial food strategy, which we would be working together and consulting with agricultural community to find out exactly how that would work and what are the priorities moving forward. So I think an investment in farming is one thing that would be very different in the next 4 years if we were to form government. And the second thing I think would be just creating affordable housing so that you would have the labor force that you need. So we need a transformation in the labor force, and that is we have covered that already, but there are multiple factors to that, and I think that would be a really important priority for an NDP government, is to make sure that we have people who are skilled labor, who are well paid, who are well housed, and that can make a good life here in Ontario. And that would be one of our big priorities for the agricultural sector. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Ashley.
Thank you. So two of the largest changes when talking to the agricultural community has been about technological advances and how the farms and the communities are growing quicker than we can sustain or keep up with. So we would be helping them in terms of their capacity with their Wi-Fi, working on hydro, things of that nature, as well as addressing the labor shortages. But what the two challenges or two biggest changes that would address challenges with the Liberal Party would be addressing their community issues. We know that those who work in agricultural have larger family backgrounds. So addressing the community issues, as Jody said, with the affordable housing, addressing home care and health care to be able to assist those farmers who do want to remain on their land, and focusing on education to be able to keep their families together and growing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
Yeah, so a re-elected PC government will continue to have farm families back. When we heard from them that there was a need for Bill 156, which was the Security from Trespassing and Protecting Food Safety Act, we moved quickly in consultations with our stakeholders in the agriculture industry to protect our food security, but also our farm families, that they should feel safe where they work and where they live in most cases. And so we'll continue to support our farm families and agribusinesses in that aspect. As was alluded to earlier in my comments around skilled development, we're investing $114 million in our skilled trade strategy, which will help our farmers, whether it's increasing the number of people who can do welding or electrical work, all these new barns that we are building with most cases robots or high-tech equipment in them. And also our education aspect with our changes to the science and technology curriculum around food literacy, but also including coding in there. Many farm dealers now are looking for students and young employees that can code, because as many of you know, tractors now are essentially moving computers. And so making sure that we have those supports locally, and these are high-paying, good jobs for our graduates out of post-secondary education. And as I alluded to earlier as well, is more natural gas projects. I believe phase 3 is beginning this year with Enbridge, and so getting more of those natural gas projects built in our riding. Thank you.
Great. Come to our last question, and we'll have Jody start to answer that question for us. Laura from the Green Party has brought up several times around soil health, and provincially the province is doing a healthy soil strategy through OMAF, and I represent dairy farmers at that table, and it's a very interesting group of researchers, conservation authorities, different agronomy groups across the province. We have Senator Rob Black in Wellington County, and he is proposing a federal soil strategy. And as we've been doing work on this provincial soil work, a lot of what I'm hearing is producers need to adopt more best management practices, including, as Laura alluded to, more minimal till, more cover crops, that type of thing. But the gap and the question I have for you is, how would the provincial government assist producers in adopting those new practices? So we'll start with Jody.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, best management practices are really quite critical and important for the province moving forward, that we work together on these kind of strategies. And also it's really important for the environment, for climate change. There's all interrelated. And the way the NDP would support best management practices is to allow the industry to work with and provide funding for people to do the research that they need to do. And it needs to be done quickly. We know that climate change issues and environmental issues are pressing, and they need to be addressed quickly. So we would trust that agriculture, the industry, we know you're already working hard to make changes and to turn things around, so to speak. So we would be supporting you in your efforts and letting you take the lead. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Ashley.
Thank you. We would also support the strategy, and once again, giving a voice to our communities, working closely with municipality and federal government, but also giving the agricultural voice that can set deadlines and help us to make the best judgment calls as we go along.
Okay, Matt.
Thanks, Janet. Yes, so a re-elected PC government under Premier Ford would continue to work with our agriculture groups and associations and stakeholders to make science-based decisions related to soil health and crop rotation. And many farmers I know locally do crop rotation and cover crops moving forward to maintain the great primary agriculture land that we have here. And also our provincial PC government did make an investment, I believe 2 years ago now, in the Ridgetown campus for a new, entirely new soil and crop research facility. So this is really going to help. We're just in the previous question talking about the next 4 years. It's really going to help make sure we're still the leaders in the world around soil crop health, the health of our crops and soil, and as climate change occurs, protection against pests and extreme weather and other things like that. So we are making these important investments in our scientific research related to soil health.
Okay, thank you. And Laura, really given this question, I should have probably had you answer it first, but the rotation, you happen to get the last word in. So Laura.
Okay, yeah. So the Green Party really supports giving power to the conservation authorities and researchers, whether they're from Guelph University, to run trials on participating farms and test the soils and compare the methods, and just really get a great understanding, share that knowledge with the farmers who are very interested in learning about soil health. Yeah, so just fully support that and pass the information on to whatever countries would be interested. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we've reached closing statements. We're going to do them in the opposite order of the openings. So we will start with Laura.
Sorry. Okay, so our goals are to create a caring society with respect to mental health, covering it with OHIP, investment in health in general, encouraging equity, investment in long-term care homes, implementing a UBI, and implementing the truth and reconciliation calls to action. We want to create connected communities, for example, 15-minute communities in cities to live, play, and shop, and end the sprawl. We want rural areas to have full access to broadband. We want to protect farmland and wetlands. We want to invest in affordable housing, 160,000 affordable rental units over the next 10 years. And we want to encourage the new climate economy by giving grants for retrofits and support for students to enter the new climate economy by funding their tuition and apprenticeships. And we want to support farmers and permanently protect farmland. And we want to advocate for our communities, our farmers. So thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Next, Jody.
Thank you. So tonight we've had a good conversation about agriculture and some of the challenges that farmers and farm families face here in Perth Wellington. And the reality is that farmers feed Ontario and the world. And if we don't protect and invest in our local farms, we face the possibility of having no farms, which would mean no food and no future. We need our agricultural industry in Perth Wellington to thrive. In order to achieve that, our farms need critical infrastructure like broadband, excellent services nearby, like healthcare and schools. From what I've heard from farmers and agri-food producers, business keeps getting tougher. So we have high cost of inputs, fluctuating market prices, and the high cost of fuel. So things do have to change now. Rural families are paying a lot more for gas and for property and for electricity, and they're getting so much less for their dollar. Doug Ford's big cuts and bad choices have hurt family farms and rural communities. The NDP has a plan to help farmers and rural communities thrive. Our priorities include investing in rural transportation, healthcare, schools, and infrastructure, roads and bridges that are needed to transport product to market, protecting prime farmland and water, and creating climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies. We want to connect rural communities so that agribusinesses have the broadband they need to compete, and rural families have the broadband they need to stay connected. We will deliver province-wide high-speed internet across rural Ontario by 2025. We will support investments to turn farm waste into biogas, reducing energy costs and carbon emissions. The NDP will raise the cap on the Agricultural Risk Management Program by $100 million. Working alongside farmers, we will develop a provincial food and water strategy to strengthen the resilience of our supply chain from farm to dinner table. I know that Perth Wellington has some of the highest quality farmland in North America, and I'm ready to work hard to make sure that our farmers and our farm families have resources and supports that they need to thrive. I'm ready to bring a strong voice to Queen's Park on your behalf. My name is Jody Burback, and I'm proud to be the NDP candidate for Perth Wellington.
Timing. That's the first time you've had to use that sign tonight, Gord. That's very good. Ashley.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for hosting for this evening. And we know that Ontario can be a place to grow, but only if we make the right choices. Rural Ontario has unfortunately not had the same opportunities that we have seen in urban opportunities that are offered to us in this riding and as well in the province. With a Ontario Liberal government, we would focus more on things that we used to have that made us strong: our public education system, our healthcare system, and having a voice at the table as our agricultural partners and rural partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Matt.
Thank you. Thanks again to the Wellington County Federation of Agriculture and to Janet, obviously, for moderating, but Lisa and Gord for keeping us on track. I'm ready to be your voice at Queen's Park and to get things done for Perth Wellington. Perth Wellington deserves an MPP who understands our values and cares about our rural communities. I've worked at Queen's Park before, and I understand the day-to-day life of an MPP, and I'll be ready on day one to serve you and your family. Progressive Conservatives are the only party that will continue to get it done for farm families and agribusinesses. Our PC government will rebuild Ontario's economy. For example, the $110 million for food processing capacity that I alluded to this evening. We'll continue working for workers, whether it's the $15 million in the Ontario Immigration Nominee Program or the $114 million for the Skilled Trades Strategy. We'll continue building highways and key infrastructure such as rural broadband and committing to high-speed internet for every community by 2025. We've already made $20 million in investments locally, and we'll continue to do so moving forward. We'll continue to keep costs down, including cutting the gas and fuel taxes, and we have a plan to stay open. In closing, a re-elected PC government will continue to get it done for our farm families and agribusinesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I want to take the opportunity to thank the 4 of you for putting your name forward. Running for any kind of government position is a lot of work and not an easy task. So thank you for taking the time and energy to put your name forward. And I guess the last closing thing I would state is we hear a lot about downtowns and the strength of downtowns. And if you have a strong downtown, you have a really good business core. And I always really like to equate that if you have a strong agricultural sector in the rural community, it's very similar to the downtown but in the rural setting. So strong rural businesses that help to run fair boards and 4-H clubs and rural schools that are the community hub in the rural areas. So the voice of agriculture hasn't always been heard or understood from that perspective, but I think that would just be my parting comment to keep in the forefront of mind when it comes to the needs of agriculture. So thank you to everybody, and thanks to Gordon, Lisa, and the rest of the WFA board for providing questions and participating in tonight. And this will be available through the Wellington Federation of Agriculture website. If you want to share that with any of your constituents, or and we thank the media that have also attended tonight to cover the event, and all the producers. And hopefully some will be watching this on their phones and their tractors, or at another date up and coming. So thank you everybody for your time, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.